Welcome to the Irish NFL show. We're looking ahead to the week 14 action, one of just 5 weekends left in the regular season, if you can believe it. It's hard to credit where that time went. And even as we wind down the regular season, of course, the festive season getting into full swing. And can we suggest that you combine your socialising with your NFL viewing pleasure this December at Buskers on the Ball in Dublin's Temple Bar? They've live games every Sunday, of course, and NFL Red Zone on big screens all night long on game nights. Can we shout out to the Irish SF faithful as well? They'll be in Buskers this very Sunday watching their beloved and red hot 49ers take on the Seahawks at Levi's Stadium. Shane Brennan, our very good friend here on the Irish NFL show, will be in attendance at Buskers too. It's a very busy schedule this weekend. Just 2 teams on bye, the Cardinals and the Commanders. They're sitting week 14 out. And the Thursday night game is Patriots at Steelers. And our podcast preview of the game with Brian and Shane will be available from Thursday morning. Brian, reflecting on those 2 teams' well-publicized offensive issues, I don't know whether they're offensive in an attacking sense or offensive to the eyes. God bless them. I mean, it's not that long ago that Steelers versus Patriots would have stopped traffic. Now you'd rather be stuck in traffic than watch some of the play that they put out. But the over-under on this game is strikingly low. I think it's settled somewhere around 30 points. So offensive fireworks not expected in Acrisure.
Yeah, I went to the trouble of checking our partner QuimBet's odds earlier on this afternoon. 30 in the region, 30.5. It's obviously fluctuated slightly over the course of the last 24 hours. 29.5 initially up to 30.5. It's the lowest over-under number in which QuimBet and various other outlets have had for quite some time in the NFL. I think it's gone back 20 to 30 years. There was a couple of college games this year. I think Navy were involved in one where there was 28.5. We're kind of falling into the college 30 on this game. But hope springs eternal, Conor, because earlier on in the season, I previewed a Thursday night football game in which the Commanders were hosting the Bears, and everyone said this is going to be the dullest affair of
60-point explosion, yeah.
It finished 40-20, and on the podcast, me and Shane discussed the fact that whilst everybody will be expecting a low-scoring game, maybe both teams will be a little bit more aggressive with the ball because they know the other offense doesn't seem to be able to take advantage of turnovers. It's an interesting one. For those who do want to have, I suppose, a flutter on the game, 18+2 gamble responsibly. Check out QuimBet.com. I think the Steelers are -6. That is where I'd be leaning on that game. But look, if the Steelers win, they'll still remain in the playoffs with 10 days to recover and obviously focus on the next game.
I think I'm leaning Pittsburgh on that myself with my old Chicago friend Mitch Trubisky at the helm. What fun. I'll reserve my final judgment though until I hear what yourself and Shane have to say tomorrow. You can check that out wherever you get your podcast. And please do remember to like and subscribe because it does help other people find us and makes us that little bit more accessible to the broadening Irish NFL community and indeed beyond. We've plenty of listeners and plenty of viewers beyond these shores and they're very welcome to our YouTube live this evening as well. Now, our first segment of game picks and previews is brought to you by RuPoint, demonstrating the value of global PR and comms. You can see how RuPoint can help your business at rupoint.com. We start column with Panthers at Saints. Are we going to get, well, as it looks at the time that we're recording now, are we going to get famous Jameis? Because it looks like Jameis Winston will be starting in place of the banged up Derek Carr, or will it be aimless Jameis?
Well, it should be infinitely more entertaining than the Derek Carr experience that we have had thus far. And I mean, really, where are the Saints going? Like, to me, I suppose they have huge questions in the offseason in terms of Dennis Allen, but also in terms of the cap hits over the next few years. This is a Panthers team. More stories coming out this week about the ill-fated Frank Reich era. Coaches stabbing each other in the back, like going directly to David Tepper, and that the fact that David Tepper was entertaining this, Conor, I think is terrifying. The fact that he was telling Frank Reich what Frank Reich should be working on with the QB, the fact that he told Ron Rivera that he wanted him to switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4 defense. This gets worse and worse and worse every single week. So that is the one piece of good news, perhaps, for Dennis Allen, is that the Panthers, I don't think offensively will be able to score enough points, and that the Saints should even with Jameis putting the ball at risk because he's going to. That's just how he lives. But it should be, a lot more entertaining. So strap in.
Brian, we don't have the beloved Derek Carr at the helm this weekend, unfortunately, for the Saints. But like Jameis and Taysom is an entertaining show in and of itself. Are you leaning Nola as well, or is there any way that Carolina, despite their, as Colin was saying, magnifying dysfunction, can find a way to pull it out?
They did play well last week, in fairness to them, in Tampa. They lost the game by 3 points, and there was an opportunity at the end to try and get the game into overtime. I mean, it looked very much like a team that were fresh off a head coach departure and were playing for the team. I suppose a set of guys that have been remained in situ and obviously begin the opportunity to kind of, I suppose, a bit of a promotion towards the end of the season. The Saints have lost 3 games in a row here. Like they're on the slip. We're talking about the Seahawks being on a slippery situation. They've lost 3. Well, the Saints have lost 3, and right now they're not even in a position to be claiming one of the wild card spots, and it's a precarious one. They were 4 for 4 in the red zone last weekend after it was kind of given out about the fact how inconsistent they were in the red zone the previous week. But the big difference there was Taysom Hill had to go step in and run in or go into the kind of trick play scenario, and Kamara getting in twice. So that doesn't bode you with confidence when they're essentially taking their main quarterback out even before he had his concussion. Obviously, he has a further injury. I'll go Saints. I have to say, genuinely, it doesn't fill me with confidence in terms of selecting them. But I think looking at the Panthers' offense, they're ranked 40th in the league. I don't think they'll have enough offensively to beat the Saints. I think the Saints will use Taysom Hill to their advantage in this game. And Kamara, as Colin might say, stick it up the jumper scenario. I think Kamara will run all over the Panthers, and the Saints inevitably win this game.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And I think if they're wise, they will lean very heavily on Kamara, as indeed Derek Carr does and has done, to the point where we've kind of made fun of it in the past of this show. It seems to be the only option he has, despite having Chris Olave, who's a fine receiver and probably well underutilized this season in New Orleans with what he has. They'll mix in plenty of Taysom Hill, I'm sure. This division, it's hard to get into. It's wildly inconsistent, and you find it difficult to make a strong case for any team in any given week. Even the Falcons, who are leading the division at the moment, we'll get to them a little bit later. But I think on balance, why we haven't seen a major relief rally in the Panthers is because the problem is still there, as Colin was outlining with David Tepper. I mean, and this is the situation that he set up to fail. If you're going to install the owner, install yourself as having a veto on every decision, which is literally what he said, the words out of his own mouth, then are you surprised the coaches are going to you asking to interfere in coaching decisions, which should be left to the coaching staff? Things are not going to get better anytime soon there, and that will be very much to New Orleans' benefit, in my opinion, this weekend. I'll roll with New Orleans as well. Brian, Texans at Jets is our next game up.
Yeah, I mean, we had a good fortune of speaking to Mike Florio, and he's put it on the owner more so than what's going on within the coaching staff. He thinks the sooner the owner comes out and declares all the staff returning and essentially running it back for next season, and basically trying to do this next season what they were supposed to do this season, which is to be a real competitive team in the AFC. And he thinks a lot of that's down to him, the inconsistencies. Everyone is living in a bit of an unknown situation. But look, the Zach Wilson thing again is taking a turn today, because now Zach Wilson has been confirmed as a starter on Sunday after him essentially dismissing himself as the quarterback and not wanting to go back in. I mean, the Jets defense.
What do you make, by the way, Brian, of the explanation for that? Which, as I heard somebody reporting on ESPN, was he confided in a teammate that he was unsure about what he should do, and he didn't necessarily want to get injured. And Robert Saleh comes out and says, "Oh, well, it's kind of like a player in a college bowl game who's declaring for the draft, wondering should he play. You're not questioning his commitment to the team. It's more about self-preservation." And I can understand that. Aaron Rodgers comes very much to his defense on the Pat McAfee show, to give the Jets some credit. At least they were trying to spin their way out of it in a positive sense, but it's a bit crazy.
Aaron Rodgers was defending everyone. He was defending Jordan Love on the Pat McAfee. He was defending not getting the vaccination. I mean, he might as well have been playing defense on that particular show. But however, it's funny. It took another turn later on in the week, because a former New York media outlet person who will work for the flagship station, who makes a guest appearance from time to time, Joe Beningo, came on, and he has a relationship with Robert Saleh, and he put out there that Saleh had texted him on Monday, said, there's not a cat in hell's chance that I'm going to put Zach Wilson back in as quarterback. And of course, he had to roll back on that and said, I misinterpreted. He was pulled back on the radio the following day because he was misinterpreted those messages which Robert Saleh had sent. But I don't think how you can misinterpret most text messages. However, we're getting away from the game because it's just so many storylines. It's all unraveling in front of us. The Texans, I think, will be buoyed by last week's victory, bearing in mind the significance of it, because the Broncos were obviously challenging them for a wildcard spot. Right now, they're on the bubble. They're not even in the playoffs. They got to get this one over the line. Again, I don't think it'd be pretty. I think the Jets' defense will slow them down, but ultimately, I think we all believe the Texans. I'd imagine we all believe the Texans will win this game.
Yeah, it's Texans for me as well, Colin.
Yeah, no Tank Dell, but should be good enough to get the win this weekend, Texans.
Colin, we leave the con with you for Rams at Ravens. Ravens are pretty heavy favourites here, and I was kind of scratching my head going, like, the Rams have been playing pretty well recently. Good win at the weekend. I'm kind of not necessarily sure I can convince myself the Ravens are going to run away with it. But then you remember Lamar Jackson just doesn't lose to NFC teams.
No, unless they're the Giants, apparently. I suppose, yeah, like the Rams have obviously been very impressive over the last three. But at other times this season, we've seen them struggle, against the Cowboys, against the Packers. I think this should be a fascinating matchup, right? Because I think the Ravens defense is really good. I think in a few weeks it'll be fascinating to see them match up against the Niners. But losing Mark Andrews is a big blow, and they stuttered a little bit the last time out because he's so central to them, and you've heard Lamar talk about it. I think the Rams have ended up in a really great position after all they gave up to win the Super Bowl, and then obviously there was the kind of bit of a disaster afterwards. But they did, I suppose, a number, like they accumulated loads of like kind of lower end draft picks, and a lot of those are working out because they've had to play those guys, and they've been really young. And like even when, I mean, if you said at the start of the season Cooper Kupp would be injured and yet the Rams would be super competitive, that's really impressive from Sean McVay. I think Les Snead deserves some credit as well for getting them back on track and ahead of schedule. And in Stafford, I mean, that throw last week, I mean, it is one of those, you watch it and, there's that gif from, it's Christian Bale just making the nice face. That is watching Matthew Stafford. He has one or two throws like that every game. I think they will be feisty, but I just think the Ravens are probably going to have too much on defense. But I think the Rams will be feisty.
Yeah, I think so too. I do fear slightly for Stafford against that fearsome Ravens pass rush. I think, he's not the most mobile guy in the world. He's getting on. He's taking a lot of punishment, and the Rams O-line hasn't necessarily done him a huge amount of favors at times this season. So that, I think, is something that I'll be worried about from a Rams point of view. As you say, Colin, I think the Rams defense has been much better than anticipated, and they got Kyren Williams back, which makes a big difference, as it did over the weekend. Some funny exchanges in the Sean McVay press conference after the game, actually, where he made a joke about running Kyren Williams rather than running down the clock and running him in for a touchdown because he had him in his fantasy league team, before immediately clarifying that was a joke because it can get you in all sorts of trouble with the league. But again, reiterates the point we've made several times here that Sean McVay is a new man this season. He seems to be having a lot of fun, and that has made the Rams very exciting to watch. And as we've watched him figure it out with them parts that we didn't necessarily think were going to come together in the hole that they have done, I still think it's a Baltimore win this weekend. Brian?
I'm uneasy on this game. I get where you're coming from, Conor. Like, we don't want to get too much into a betting aspect. When I looked at the QuinBet.com's line, I saw -7. I thought it was relatively high, bearing in mind how well the Rams have played. They've scored 36 points in each of their last two games. The game prior to that, they scored something in the region of 29. Right? They are stacking up points, and you're right in what you said. Kyren Williams is playing fantastic. I think ultimately it may come down to how well he can run the ball, because how efficiently they can get the run game going, because they are going up against one of the best passing defenses in the league. I think it'll be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be really tight, but I think the Rams will put up a really great account themselves. But I think ultimately it'll come down to the Ravens pulling it out. John Harbour's 12-3 coming off a bye week in his last 15 games. I mean, it says itself. He gets 2 weeks to prepare for his next opponent, and he finds a way to come out and win convincingly enough. I think it might be a little bit more tighter than people expect, but I do believe the Ravens have to win this one, because we're talking about 1 or 2 teams, for the 1 seed in the NFC. Certainly 2. There's 3 or 4. There's 4, let's just say, with the Chiefs hanging around 1 game behind. So they've got to keep up, and they've got the Dolphins to play in a few weeks, which should be a huge game. So the Ravens need this, I think, to get over the line, but I think it'd be a lot tighter than what people expect.
Final game of the first segment is Colts at Bengals, another huge game, and one with so much on the line for both teams, which, despite being banged up and both playing their backup quarterbacks, as indeed a lot of teams are, particularly in the AFC this weekend, there's a lot of unfamiliar matchups going on, and this is kind of one of them, although we're pretty familiar with Gardner Minshew for the Colts at this stage. Bengals coming up that upset win against the Jags on Monday Night Football, which means a shorter week for them, which isn't great from a Bengals perspective. Colts, obviously, after a barnstorming finish to beat the Titans in their weekend game. I'm kind of torn on this one, and didn't think I would be until I saw the way Jake Browning played against the Jags. It's also a reminder, having pulled that one out in Duval, that the Bengals are tough as nails, and they're a really resilient, gutsy team, and they don't mind being put into a tight spot. We've talked about how they have racked up these really impressive playoff wins on the road. I was leaning towards them being the AFC Super Bowl representative early in the season, and leaning towards Burrow as MVP. That dream, I think, has died, but the Bengals are still a really tough out. I don't think they're going away. I was really impressed by some of what I saw, in particular from Jake Browning on Monday night. There's always that thing as well, when there's a relatively limited amount of tape on a guy, and we've talked about it before, it can be difficult to prepare for. I know the Colts are favourites in this one. I'm actually going Cincinnati. Colin, what do you think?
Well, on the Browning piece, I mean, people may have seen Ryan Leaf was pretty disgruntled at some of Mina Kimes' comments, who had dismissed Browning as little more than a punter a few weeks ago when Burrow first went down, and kind of highlighted that to her after the performance, to go over 85% when you're throwing the ball more than 30 times and throw over 350 yards. It's pretty impressive stuff.
It's not the worst setup to be in either, right? You're still throwing the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Those guys haven't gone anywhere, and you got Joe Mixon to hand the ball off to. Not the worst setup.
No, and in fairness, I think you've got to give credit to the coaching staff with the Bengals, who have kind of altered the way in which they play. And I think Chase has to get an enormous amount of credit, right? Because this is what you want a true alpha receiver to do. You want your WR1 to be able to go out to make plays and to make your QB look better. And that's what really great receivers do. And I think that's what he did. And he's never, he hasn't dropped the head when Burrow got injured. The concern I have for the Bengals, though, is the defense. And, they've given up a huge amount of points. And this Colts team they're wild. Like they really are like Gardner mentioned. Like, he tries to give the ball away, quite a bit. But somehow they find a way and they rally, and you saw them in the locker room at the weekend, and the players really respond to him. And a little bit, I suppose, like the Broncos in some ways, they have moved off of some of their older kind of guys, and that has helped them. The younger guys kind of come together. I think either team could win this, and I think the Bengals being at home will give them a huge lift. And after coming out of Jacksonville, I think the fans will be up for it. But I'm going to say that Shane Steichen and the Colts continue this crazy run that they're on, and I think they will get the win.
Brian, Shane Steichen is on to Cincinnati, as Bill Belichick once infamously said, but will he be moving on from Cincinnati with a win?
Not for me. I will side with the Bengals. You're right, Mark. Like, after the Broncos losing last week, the Colts are now the hottest team in the AFC, four games in a row, going for 5. So, all the momentum is there. When the Bengals played the Steelers 2 weeks ago, I selected the Bengals. I thought Browning in that game when he came in on Thursday night had played really well. I thought I saw something there that I felt was okay. He's really serviceable backup, and then people would suggest, oh yeah, but the Ravens didn't have enough tape, so therefore he can come in and immediately play well, and teams will catch up. And the following week, the Steelers caught up with him, but he still did. He did some nice things in that Steelers game, and like you touched on there, Connor, he's got an abundance of players available to him. I mean, Jamar Chase 11 receptions for 149 yards. I mean, that was the type of stuff he was doing with Joe Burrow, maybe a little bit better, but by and large, and on the road. But nobody, and Mixon as well last week. So they're going to lean on the run game as well. So I'm going to go Bengals. I think the Bengals are going to mix this wildcard race up. They may not get there in the end, but they may be the team that causes all the disruption along the way that people didn't think 2 or 3 weeks ago.
All right, that brings us to the end of our first segment of Game Picks, brought to you by RuPoint, demonstrating the value of PR and comms. You can see how RuPoint can help your business at rupoint.com. So we move to our second segment of games column, when we start with Jags at Browns. 2 teams down to their backups. Again, this is a recurring theme in the AFC this weekend. Trevor Lawrence has, and you can't say this, unfortunately, without inserting the word dreaded in front of it, he has the high ankle sprain.
Yeah, and it's tough to know, I suppose, how long he will be out for with that. I mean, some of it might be on how this game goes, and perhaps how other results go, because they were ahead, but you'd have to say that both the Colts and the Texans, have nice run-ins, so that might put some additional pressure on them. I mean, you can take the cortisone shot and go out there. We've seen Trevor Lawrence play. I mean, you talked about the Bengals being tough as nails. Trevor Lawrence has shown that he's willing to play through injury, but it does limit him. Now, he's not going to play, obviously, in this one. The problem I feel for the Browns, Connor, is that they are so banged up on defense. Like, Myles Garrett played at the weekend, but he didn't really, like, he can't move one arm. I heard, I think it was on the Ringer NFL podcast, that Myles Garrett had to have help putting his shirt taken off and putting on his shirt after the game. That's not a good sign. I mean, it speaks to the toughness of NFL players, but like, he was everything to them this season. Like, he just took over games, and teams absolutely feared him. And when you don't have that, it takes away a huge piece of what you could do.
The thing about a monstrous D lineman like Garrett as well is he's a force multiplier. It means that the linebackers can do more. It means that your secondary is in a better position. Like, it's difficult to overstate the impact of having a guy like that, having a pass rusher like that, being able to put the pressure he's able to put on up front. It frees up other people. It completely changes what you can do as a defense. And if you don't have him at full effect, the entire defense suffers, unfortunately, conversely, more than they would from the loss of any other single player. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I don't know how the Jags managed to compensate for the loss of Trevor Lawrence, though, which I think for me is the bigger loss between the two, obviously. And you get that game one bounce from the backup sometimes. I'm not so sure what it happens here in Cleveland. I have to say, I'm just about edging towards the Browns, but not with a great degree of confidence, I have to say.
I think it could be a coin flip game. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in Joe Flacco, despite the game last week. I don't know. I'll go Jags. Just because.
Brian,
the Browns for you or the Jags?
Colin is shooting the breeze with his Jags selection. I'm going Browns because I think the Browns they've fallen into a situation here. We talked about scheduling a couple of weeks ago, whether you look at what's coming up, you look at how well the Jags are playing, and obviously the scenario that the Browns are in terms of their defense struggling. I said I thought they'd fall off because of the quarterback situation. And then you find yourself in a situation where your team and the leading player is out, and it puts so much pressure. And can the rookie quarterback go into Cleveland? I think Jim Schwartz in particular will scheme up enough defensively to slow the Jags off. And don't forget that Christian Kirk is gone as well. He's gone. Like, he's one of their leading players, wide receiver. I know Ridley is their strongest player this year, but like, Kirk is also a good number 2 if he's not the number 1. He's gone now for 6 weeks. Like, that's 2 huge, significant players on their offense. They're going to need everyone to step up. I just can't see it. I think it's the Browns. a Browns win, and it wouldn't have been the case if they had Trevor Lawrence playing. But it's the Browns for me.
No, it's amazing how quickly that's unraveled, unfortunately, from a team that was bidding for the number 1 seed now to a team with a big question mark over it heading down the stretch. A team that's managed to shift the question mark hanging over it over the weekend was the Lions, Colin, who are in Soldier Field to take on the Bears this weekend.
Yeah, and I see Justin Fields is now being asked in relation to his future with the Bears, and he said, "Life isn't fair, and you just have to get on with it." The Lions' defense is an enormous concern. I just don't think the Bears' offense is good enough to take advantage of it. But the Lions, if the Lions want to make a real run in the playoffs, not just get there, they're going to have to figure out the defense, because it has been really, really poor. And not last year, it was interesting. They started off really poorly and they got it together and they made adjustments. This year, that hasn't been the case on the defensive side of the ball, and that would worry you. I think for the Bears, they're treading water. I don't believe Eberflus will be back next year. I think it's going to be a brand new regime and a new QB, new head coach, and they'll probably pick up a couple of pieces from trading Fields. So I'd say there'll be lots of new faces in Chicago next year.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily go along with all that. And there's one big caveat hanging over this game for me. And you know, I may change depending on how the meteorological information filters in over the next couple of days. The weather in Chicago is supposed to be shocking for this game. Jared Goff, as we know, is very much a house cat. It's supposed to be very windy and cold in Chicago this weekend, which may limit the passing game, which will absolutely suit the Bears, who have the number 1 rush defense in the NFL this season, and one of the best running games going as well, including Fields, of course. Now, a lot of this depends on what Luke Getsy can scheme up, I think, from a Bears perspective, and I think it's probably how the Bears offense goes that decides this game, to your point, Colin. We know the weaknesses in the Lions defense. Fields and the Bears offense tore them up for most of the game before falling flat in the last 4 minutes and collapsing, losing a 12-point lead to allow the Lions pull out the win there. I think this one could be a revenge game from the Bears, depending on how that weather goes. I'm leaning. I'd lean Lions if it goes one way. I may back out of that and lean Bears if it goes the other way. It's a watch and see for me. But keep an eye on that weather information before making a final judgment, would be my advice. Brian, what do you think?
It sounds like the people who are due to wipe that snow off the field and suddenly might go missing to accommodate a Bears game plan. If I can't buy Connor, I'm sorry. Despite the frailties of the Lions defense, and I know you're like the Bears defense has improved significantly against their run, but you're going up against the likes of Montgomery and Gibbs. For me, that would be where the game would be won and lost. I think if it's a difficult game and Goff is in the position to, I suppose, be expansive in terms of the offense, I think they'll rely heavily on the run game, and because they got two monsters in the backfield now, which are playing really well alongside each other, I think they'll be more than enough. And if they do get into the red zone, the Bears are the worst defensive team in the league in the red zone. So for me, inevitably Lions will find ways to get into the end zones. Their best start since 1962. I see it improving on Sunday. The Lions for me.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will say, by the way, and I meant to bring this up when we were talking on our Talking Points show, and I had a reminder down to say it. I loved the call over the weekend from Dan Campbell to let Jared Goff throw to win the game last weekend on 3rd and 9. It was a really gutsy call, and Campbell makes a lot of gutsy calls. You know, he's renowned for it. But this one, to me, was all about demonstrating faith and trust in Jared Goff, seeing the bigger picture and saying, okay, we could run. There's under a minute left. The Saints have no timeouts. We don't need to gain the first down. We can punt the ball and we'll probably stop them, and we're still probably going to win the game. But I'm going to put the ball in your hands because I believe in you to go out and win it. Your quarterback's had a couple of tough outings. That was a risky call, but it says everything about how he believes in his player and how he wants his player to feel. I really admired that. And that's how you support your quarterback. We've talked about other teams that have undermined their signal caller. I think Dan Campbell went all in on Jared Goff, and I'm sure that's going to pay dividends down the stretch. And who knows, that may start in Soldier Field this Sunday. Bucks at Falcons is our next game up. Some people are calling this the NFC South Championship game, which effectively it is. The Falcons are 3-0 in the division. They haven't lost a game yet against the might of the Bucks, the Panthers, and the Bucks themselves. This was or the Saints rather. This was a crazy enough game earlier on this season. Falcons had a couple of red zone turnovers, which ended up making it a lot closer than it might otherwise have been. Falcons have put back-to-back wins together, which has kind of been the infuriating factor for them, is the inconsistency over the last couple of seasons. They bobbed and weaved in and around 500. They have a chance to go above 500 and go 7-6 and really probably put this sorry division to bed this weekend. I think Arthur Smith has figured a few things out over the past couple of weeks. That's not to say he won't veer off in the other direction and get away from what's actually been working for him, which is the maddening thing that Arthur Smith has tended to do. But I think that Bucks defense is very banged up, and the Falcons are probably primed to take advantage of them at home. I think this will be a fairly comfortable Atlanta win, I have to say, lads. What do you think?
Can't disagree. Falcons, for me, I think this is the turning point in the NFC South this weekend. Opportunity to push on Falcons.
The Falcons, they'll trip over themselves along the way, but they'll stumble over and get the win.
Brian, Vikings at Raiders, both of these teams coming off a bye, and both of them still with playoff possibilities. Vikings rolling with Josh Dobbs. There was a little bit of a back and forth this week as to whether he would actually start at quarterback after the performance last week. But he's got Justin Jefferson back, and nice of Kevin O'Connell to give him a shot with arguably the best receiver in the league this season, outside of Tyreek Hill, available again.
Yeah, I'm surprised it was a conversation in the sense of people were suggesting he would be relieved of his duties so quickly. I mean, let's not forget this. They were in no man's land. They had Mullen as the backup and didn't feel he was suitable. Obviously, they tried Webb, the rookie, before he got his concussion in that opening game. And then they make the trade. So Dobbs had that initial period where everything looked great. And in fairness, we did stress, like, there were some bright moments that obviously led to victories, such as the game in Atlanta. But if you looked at numbers, he wasn't lighting up. And we saw the frailties in the Bears game and the Broncos game. But yeah, they're not in any other position where they can really change. Like, how do you change things up now? You're completely then asked in a different situation. You're bringing Jefferson back. I'm going to go Raiders, though. I think Antonio Pierce has obviously excited everybody around there. They had the initial, uplift where they won the games. And people said, "Oh yeah, but it was against a poor Giants team and a poor Jets team, and they'll get blown away when they go down to Miami." And arguably, they're the only team that have gone into Miami this year and actually put up a really stellar performance. They only lost by a touchdown. He's clearly getting out of players. I think they're comfortable when they play at home in Vegas, and I think we're going to see Dobbs struggle again. And I think the Raiders are coming off a bye week as well, so it's not a case of one team that had 2 weeks to prepare. They've had 2 weeks to prepare. It's a Raiders victory for me.
Colm, there were reasons to be cheerful for the Raiders despite that loss to Kansas City. Got off to a great start, of course. Then the Chiefs came roaring back. Josh Jacobs went for over 100 yards, which will gladden the hearts of Raiders fans. They've had a week off. Things have looked an awful lot better under Antonio Pierce than they did under Josh McDaniels. Not hard, says you, with a lot of Josh McDaniels scarring still on your Broncos soul, of course. How do you see this one go?
I think you're a big tease, Connor, with the Raiders are still in with a chance of making the playoffs. Oh my God. They have to, even if they win all 5 games, they need everything to fall their way. I mean, remember now, the Colts and the Texans are both sitting at 7-5. I mean, I think my Broncos are going to struggle to make it.
My Bears were in the hunt graphic. I never thought I'd see that this season. That there's nothing screams mediocrity like the 4-8 Bears still being in the hunt.
They love doing those graphics. Even if the Raiders win all 5, they end up with 10 wins. I don't think that'll be enough in this AFC. I mean, they got the bounce absolutely, and they're much better, and they do have good players on defense. But I think what Brian Flores has done with that Vikings defense has been so impressive. He puts you in a blender, and it's really difficult for rookie QBs. I think the Raiders have big questions in the offseason as to what exactly they are and where exactly they're going. I think in an ideal world, I think they would have probably traded Devontae Adams at the deadline, in order to get picks. But that didn't end up happening. I think Dobbs was he was trying way too hard. I think we're seeing the limitations. I don't think he is probably a starter. I think he's a very capable backup, but I think he was trying way too hard. Like if he just thrown the ball away twice in the Vikings last game, they probably would have been fine. But he tries to make every throw. It's like, just either take the sack or throw it away, but don't like decide, to play hero ball all the time.
You don't get a nickname like the Pastronaut by eating sacks, Colin.
Well, so sometimes, I think maybe you need it, and I think I think maybe while it came back down to earth, as they were saying, I think the time, the bye and the time with Kevin O'Connell will have been useful, and I'm going to say that the Brian Flores led defense will cause issues for AOC, and I think that the Vikings can sneak a win.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm siding with you on that one. I think the Vikings will sneak a win. I think it's an interesting one, and I definitely think the Raiders are not an easy out. Certainly not the easy out that they were earlier in the season, but I think the Vikings are going to win that one. Brian, Seahawks at 49ers. If there was ever a time you didn't want to roll into Santa Clara off the back of a 3-game losing skid, it's this weekend after the Eagles. Unless, of course, the 49ers have a come down after that emotional and pretty awe-inspiring win in Philadelphia.
So the watch party's on Sunday, Connor. You know the scenario.
Irish SF faithful currently looking daggers at you, Brian.
Owen Farrell certainly is. No, look, I think unfortunately for the Seahawks, they're coming up in it. They're on a run, which is a really difficult stretch within the season in terms of who they're playing. Obviously, the Cowboys last weekend, they did it. Like, they put up a great account of themselves last weekend. They nearly pulled it off in terms of the shock. They played the 49ers this week, and then they have the Eagles on Monday Night Football. And we're not sure where the Eagles will be. Bear in mind, we have such a big game to talk about in a few minutes, which is obviously the Sunday Night Football game. The Eagles really need that game coming next week. I think, unfortunately for them, they're coming up against the juggernaut. We, as you said, we spoke to Mike Florio, and he basically said, it doesn't matter where the 49ers play right now, whether it's on the road, whether at home. Ever since they came back off the bye, they've been galvanized after the 3 defeats. They're getting everybody back at the right time. The only team that can stop them potentially to be in the number 1 seed now is injuries, and I don't see anything other than a comprehensive win. They took care of them on Thanksgiving, and I imagine they'll be able to take care of them at home. A really strong performance again. I think they're trying to keep their feet on the ground right now, because we've seen it during the season. Certain teams have been smelling themselves, as we like to say, and then obviously they quickly get turned over. I don't see it in this instance. I think this is a comprehensive 49ers victory.
Yeah, I agree with you. Maybe not too comprehensive. I don't think the Seahawks are going to let that happen. I liked a lot of what I saw from them last weekend. I thought they went in and put in a really strong performance, as you said, in Arlington, and really put it up to the Cowboys. Geno looked a lot better. DK Metcalf, if you can replicate that kind of form, he's virtually impossible to stop. Guy with he's hit the top speed mark, which people were teasing Tyreek Hill about during the week. The only player in the NFL to go above 22 miles an hour this season, which is freakish for a guy that big and that strong. You would just get the hell out of the way. If you ever see DK Metcalf running at 22 miles an hour towards you, it would be my best advice. But as you say, Brian, the 49ers mean business. I think they've learned their lesson from earlier on this season. They had that 3-game skid. Injuries cost them there, and perhaps a little bit of complacency at times over that spell. That they're locked in now, though, and they are a fearsome side. And I don't see a way for Seattle to navigate their way to a victory here. There was a time when Pete Carroll kind of had the Indian sign over Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan is 4-0 against the Seahawks in his last 4 games, and I think he's going to make it 5. Colin, what do you think?
Yeah, not a huge amount to add. The 49ers are the best team in the league at the moment. But as I mentioned, certainly on Monday Night Show, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that Brock Purdy is in the MVP conversation, because he's not the MVP on his own team. If the 49ers were starting, right, if they had the opportunity, right, to they were building and they had to pick right from their players right now, in terms of like, do we believe that Kyle Shanahan would pick Brock Purdy first? Would he pick Brock Purdy over Christian McCaffrey? over Deebo Samuel, over Trent Williams? I don't think he would. I do not believe that. Brock Purdy is a very, very, very good quarterback who is an important piece of what is a monstrous, a truly incredible offensive machine that bullies you, it batters you, it wears you down, it can beat you in every which way, but he is not the key component. The two receivers are really there, and Trent Williams, because you saw that the other night. We talked about it. Brian talked about it on Monday. Everything went behind Trent Williams to get it going against the Eagles, and once they had it motoring, my goodness, they were an unstoppable machine. I don't think the Seahawks are going to be able to come close to stopping them in Santa Clara, and it should be the 49ers. The lads in buskers should enjoy their evening.
And we wish them well with that as we come to the end of our second segment of picks, where we move into our third segment of Week 14 picks, and we start with that doozy of the game, and it's all killer, no filler in this segment, I tell you. We start with Bills at Chiefs, Brian, and the Chiefs. Both of these teams really need to bounce back, and they need this win for different reasons. Chiefs still kind of chasing that number 1 seed, although last weekend put a dent in that. And Bills look like they'll be chasing a wildcard slot at this stage. And the Bills have the Von Miller situation hanging over this, and you don't know how that's going to affect the team going into Arrowhead.
Yeah, I saw today that they're suggesting that Von Miller will play on Sunday, and I guess they really need him. They really need him thrown up and show the form, which we saw previously from Von Miller, before obviously the trade and how productive he was with the Rams, and even at the early stage of last year, obviously before injuries took hold of him. But this Bills defense just hasn't been the same over the course of the season. They got it right back a couple of weeks ago against the Jets, but you could argue everything this year has slowed down that Jets offense, if it even is an offense. Unfortunately for them, they're coming against a team with the Chiefs. It's like I saw Chiefs fans today saying we're very much in the mix for the number 1 seed. And okay, fine, they are on paper, they are very much so. They're 1 game behind, but it's not a case of it's the 49ers or Eagles for number 1 pick, and obviously maybe the Cowboys will, bring themselves into the equation here. They're having to see teams such as the Ravens stumble twice, and they're going to have to see the Dolphins stumble twice. And the Dolphins have got numerous games. 4 of the last 5 games are at home. I think it's too big of a stretch now. I think the Chiefs need to regalvanize themselves and try to fix the problems which are this offense, because this offense just hasn't done enough this season. The game last weekend, they were very poor for large parts. Then at the end, they'll talk over referee decisions. But let's not get away from it. I think Colin called it on Monday. Let's not get away from the fact that Packers deserved to win this game. I do think the Chiefs will win this game. I think defensively, you're asking me which defense right now. I think Spagnuolo defense over the course of the season, Chiefs defense has played well. I think the Bills defense is in a pickle here, and I think Mahomes will do enough bands. If this win percentage for me would finish off the Bills season, but the Chiefs need this one.
Colin, it feels like we spent a lot more time praising the Chiefs defense this season, which has been lights out at times under Steve Spagnuolo, and spent a lot more time doing it than we have praising the Chiefs offense, which is something of a surprise, but not unjustified.
No, not at all. I mean, I think the Chiefs are 3rd in points given up. I think the Ravens and the 49ers are the 2 who are ahead of them. And yeah, they have been really, really impressive. And the part that's been, incredibly impressive is how young they are. And outside of Chris Jones, they're probably not superstar names, but they have been playing really, really well. Now the Packers definitely caused them some issues last week, and the offense is struggling. This is it. This is, I believe, the last chance saloon for the Bills. If the Bills want to have any hope of making the playoffs, they have to win out, and the only way they can do that is Josh Allen, basically putting the team on his back. I suppose the piece in which I'm wondering if the Bills have learned, they've had a bit of time, and maybe they need to just unleash the Josh Allen we know that can take over games, right? They were trying to rein him in a little bit, I think, to prolong his career. But if they want to hoist the Lombardi, right? This is as good a year as a chance as you're going to get. This Chiefs team are not the Chiefs team of old. There is no super contender in the AFC side of things, right? The Ravens have lost Mark Andrews. We talked about that. I'm going to say, and I could end up absolutely with egg on my face here. I think Josh Allen is going to put this Bills team on his back. And I think it's the only way they can do it. I think he can go in to Arrowhead and get the win. But we could be talking on Monday and it could have fallen completely flat, and the things could look very bleak there.
Yeah, I struggle with this one, Colin, I have to say, for a lot of the reasons that you've outlined there. And it's funny that after the first game of the season, when the Bills really blew that game in MetLife after Aaron Rodgers had blown out his Achilles and it was there for the taking, and Josh Allen just tried too hard. And we were talking about, yeah, maybe the Bills need to rein Josh Allen in. But at the same time, the last thing you want to do is coach the Josh Allen out of Josh Allen. And right now they need all the Josh Allen they can manage. Some of which we saw in their last game against the Eagles, where, let's face it, they're a miracle 59-yard field goal in the rain from Jake Elliott away from winning that one, which we've kind of forgotten. Probably one of their best performances of the season. On the one hand, you look at the Bills and you think, I don't want to dismiss everything we've seen over the last couple of seasons. A lot of the constituent parts are still there. But I have a question mark over the coaching. I have a question. I don't know how this Von Miller situation is going to affect him. It's very serious. I know we don't want to particularly get into the details, and we'll see what happens there. But it's backs against the wall stuff, and if the team are the team that they're supposed to be, which infuriatingly at times, just when you want them to show up, they haven't done, then they simply have to win this one. To your point, Colin. And I've never felt less confident about the Chiefs over recent seasons than I do right now, because somebody needs to show up for them. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, and there's no coming off the things that he can do and that he has been doing, and he's been trying his level best to try and magic something out of the offense around him. At times we've seen flashes from Rashee Rice. At times Kelsey's looked at his best. At times he's looked like a banged up tight end that's just taken too much punishment, which effectively is what he is, to be fair to him. And he doesn't know the Chiefs an awful lot, or us an awful lot, given what he's put in over the last couple of seasons. But just don't see any of the role players stepping up for them. That defense has really had to carry them at times, and will have to do so again if they're to win this one. I think on balance, I'm going to go Chiefs after all that. I'm not so sure I can confidently predict that Buffalo going to Arrowhead and take it. And the Chiefs are stung after that Green Bay performance and with everything that's thrown at them. And I think if you're talking about backing what you've seen from teams over recent seasons, then you kind of have to back the reigning Super Bowl champions, given all that we've seen for them, is how I sort this one out.
He's torn, Colin. He's torn.
I looked into my heart and eventually I came out Chiefs. Colin, your Broncos at the Chargers this weekend.
Yeah, an AFC West matchup. Again, I mean, if the Raiders are kind of in with a chance of making the playoffs, so too are these Chargers. Who
save our Staley, SOS.
Who won a 6-0 game. Definitely sounded like a Division 3 fixture against the Patriots. This, I suppose, like, again, the Broncos were like, they weren't good enough against the Texans last week. Ultimately, they came up short. They played they won a lot of close games. Russ had some real misses, and one of the things I have done this year is try to watch Broncos games without following everything on Twitter. I react to it at the end of a quarter. I put stuff out myself. But the wild swings, we talked about this on Monday, like, we're a week on from Broncos fans demanding everyone signs an apology letter to Russell Wilson and he should win comeback player of the year. And then a week later, his head coach is calling him out publicly, saying he's missing guys. He's also calling out the right-hand side of the line. So Russ does need to play better. Like, at times he's played well this year and he's played within structure. But when you play within that, you have to play, almost mistake-free football, or at least you have to, have more hits than misses. The Chargers, Khalil Mack is the success story of their season, but overall, like, you go up to New England, and yes, you're going up. Bill Belichick is really in his bag of tricks, but you fail to score even one touchdown when you have Justin Herbert. That's got to be a concern. I don't imagine this is going to be a high scoring game. I think there's probably a field goal within difference between these two teams. I'm going to say the Broncos can do it, because I think the Chargers, you can get at them, and I think Sean Payton and this Broncos team have shown that they're not short of aggression. So I'm going to say that the Broncos will get it done, but I imagine something akin to like 22-19 or something like that.
Brian?
Broncos for me. You're asking me which head coach I trust more in this precarious situation with both teams are in, on the cusp of potentially being in the playoffs or making that late run. Sean Payton over Brandon Staley any day of the week. Control game, what Conor was going to said.
Same.
Broncos.
I concur. It's Denver for me as well. Brian, back at you. Eagles at Cowboys in Sunday Night Football. This is a divisional clash with the division potentially now on the line, which is not something we thought we'd be saying a couple of weeks ago when the Eagles looked like they were running away with it. But that's now not the case. The Eagles, in the midst of this brutal run, coming off the back of a slobber knocking, as Peter King would say, against the 49ers. Cowboys rolling, the Dak MVP talk, and Fred Flunk flying the flag is all the rage at the moment. Fred's organising his own watch party this weekend. Be careful with that, Fred. You don't want to put the mockers on it. What way do you see this one going, Brian?
We're all getting an invitation out to Lucan, I believe, to the Fred Flunk watch party. I can only imagine what it's like to watch a Cowboys game with Fred. It's probably just as bad as it is to watch your teams. This is it for Dak, isn't it? This is the game. Like, this has to be the game. Like, we're talking about him being the MVP. We're talking about for years on end about how people see him as an upper echelon quarterback. He's probably been one of the most talked about quarterbacks over the course of the last 2 to 3 years in terms of what people think of him, whether they see him in the upper tier quarterback or whether he's the middle of the road. And 9 times out of 10, he falls flat in the bigger game. And with all due respect from, like, there's been games, where the team haven't showed up and it's been left on him and he can't get it done. But the way they're playing at the moment, and essentially the way they're playing at home, I mean, they're averaging in the region 38 points a game at home against an Eagles defense, which we talked about Monday, is ranked in the bottom tier of the league, but yet they've been finding ways to navigate victories. And the Eagles will see. This is the thing. Eagles are the kind of team that everybody's going to assume they're going to lose this game because of the nature of how they lost last week. And they'll come out and have a reaction, and Sirianni all week will be pumping them up, very much like the old Fergie days where everyone thinks we're written off and we come back and prove a point. But I'm going to go with the Cowboys. I think this is their time to finally make that leap, get to first place in the NFC East, and potentially even get to first seed, depending on how the 49ers season plays out. The 49ers have still to play the Ravens. That's another big game to come, obviously, the bearing on the number 1 seed across the board. Cowboys, for me, high-scoring affair, Sunday Night Football, probably one of the better games of the season. And the Cowboys finally get over the line. And Dak Prescott, who played very well in Philadelphia, other players didn't, in particular the defense, they get it done on Sunday. Cowboys.
Yeah, this is a cracker, an early Christmas cracker, if you like. It's one of those ones where I think I start out talking without necessarily knowing which team I'm going to pick when I finish talking. As you say, Brian, the Cowboys' best players across the piece are probably playing better than all of the Eagles' best players. Good and all as the talent is in Philadelphia, and we've talked about how they haven't been anywhere near their best and whether they were building their way into the season despite having been 10-1, now 10-2. The Cowboys aren't the 49ers. Good and all as the Cowboys have been, and they're playing at or near their best at the moment. CeeDee Lamb has been unbelievable, in particular defensively. We call out any number of players, Micah Parsons to stand out there. There's a lot of reasons to think that the Cowboys will win. One serious concern I have, though, is a player that people were, I think, mistakenly calling out as a potential Defensive Player of the Year candidate, DaRon Bland, picked on mercilessly by the Seahawks last weekend. And if you think that DK Metcalf was difficult to handle, AJ Brown is not anymore any easier an assignment. And that's one weak link that I would have serious concerns about in that Cowboys secondary. Duran came up with the key interception, and that maybe slightly changed the narrative of the game. Nothing like a bit of peak end bias. Everybody goes away happy because that did ultimately help swing the result, and fair play to him. But he was really taken apart most of the night, and the Eagles are going to go after that. You looked at those 2 opening drives that the Eagles put together against the 49ers, and only the 49ers would have stopped them scoring touchdowns there. That was a heroic red zone effort on both occasions to prevent that game getting away from them. I don't know. It's on a knife edge for me. I think, I'm just going to edge Cowboys because it's at home, because they've been playing so well, and because it is a real prove-it game for them. But it's also a prove-it game for the Eagles, who will not want to drop 2 in a row, who will be really, really hurting both physically and psychologically from that 49ers game, and will desperately want to prove it right. One thing that hangs in my mind is teams that have lost to the 49ers over the past couple of seasons come out pretty beaten up and tend to drop the following game as well, because that's what the Niners do to you when they're at their best. And those Trent Williams brutal lead blocks with Christian McCaffrey coming in behind over and over again, those body blows that defense took in the second half after going to overtime against Buffalo earlier, all of that's taken its toll on Philly. This is a good time for the Cowboys to be facing them, and I think they will win, Colin.
So 30 points, 38 points, 43 points, 49 points, 45 points, 41 points. That's the Cowboys scoring record at home. Dak is playing the best football of his career. CeeDee Lamb has truly turned into a WR1, and Mike McCarthy went down with acute appendicitis, but he has been through surgery and has told Dan Quinn that he will be on the sidelines coaching on Sunday. Dan Quinn said, "Are you really going to do it?" And he said, "I'm one tough Irish man. I'm not going to miss this MFer." So surely.
Is that a positive or negative? I'm not sure.
That is this is all set up, and you've both said it's going to be the Cowboys. Well, Dallas Goedert is a full participant in the Eagles, and I'm like the Cowboys should win this. But I think what Brian is saying, Nick Sirianni is going to absolutely this week have them all riled up, and I would say that they're going to look to keep it close. They cut one of the guys who started against the 49ers, and in terms of the linebackers, they're moved off that immediately, so they've recognized that they need to make a change. It brought in Shaq Leonard, not the player that he once was, but another kind of interesting piece.
Jesus, the tackle dummy would have been better than the 2 linebackers they had in over the weekend.
Yeah, that was really poor. And if you were to have, I suppose, one criticism of Howie and the Eagles, that is a position that has been a real issue for them the whole time. And I think that is an area where they are weak. The Cowboys should win it. They absolutely should, and this could be one where they slap the Eagles around. Like this could kind of be, a cat toying with a mouse, and they could put another kind of 40 burger on them, and the Eagles could come out of this. But I'm going to go with the Eagles to get the shock. I assume, Brian, that the Cowboys are favorites for this one.
They are, Colin. Quimbe have the line at -3.5 points, which essentially for you, inexperienced betting punter, means the expectation is the Cowboys will win by 4 or more.
So I'm gonna say it'll be a very, very tight game. I'm not going to be surprised if Dallas were to. I think if Dallas win, they win big. I think, but I'm going to say Philly win an absolute close one.
All right, looking forward to it. Brian, your Giants are at home to the Packers this weekend in Monday Night Football. We have a Monday Night Football doubleheader, of course. I'm not sure what's the quarterback situation here. Does the passing Paisan get another goal? It seems Tyrod Taylor is back.
Oh, you've not heard the news, Connor? No, Brian Daboll was immediately straight up with the answer yesterday. No messing around. No, we'll see how the week unfolds. We have till Monday. We have to. Tommy DeVito is starting quarterback. Do I agree with it? No, I don't. I prefer to see Tyrod play because the Giants' consistent message, well, Brian Dable's consistent message over the course of the season and last year was the best players will play no matter what the circumstance. Now he's saying that right now the best opportunity to win is to play Tommy DeVito, and maybe there is a case in point in that his numbers stack up in terms of how well he's played in the 2 of the 3 games, and they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. I would prefer Tyrod Taylor to come back in. We're talking about a quarterback that's been paid $7 million a year to come in and be a serviceable backup because the Giants have always undermined the backup situation because they've had Eli Manning for so long, but they've recognised now you need to have a strong backup in this league. Because we're seeing it right now. We spoke about it with Mike Fryer. How many teams are playing with backups and still trying to get into the playoffs? That said, I am picking the Giants to win. I know the Packers are on a 3-game run. Everybody's assuming the Packers are going to win. But the Giants earmarked this game a couple of weeks ago as a winnable game in their push to be in the hunt, as you like to call it, Connor. And defensively is why I think the Giants will win, because the Giants' defense throughout the difficult period, and despite all the back and forth talk of Wink Martindale not getting on with Brian Dave, defense over the course of the season has been quite good. Thibodeau's obviously had a really strong season. I think they slowed Love down enough for the Giants to stumble over the line on Monday Night Football.
Colm, Packers, as Brian rightly pointed out, on a 3-game winning streak and will be greatly buoyed, you imagine, by that victory over the Chiefs. Does that carry them into MetLife on a high?
Can I say, Connor, I am delighted he is back. He's back. The Brian O'Leary, the Giants hype train. It doesn't matter who they're playing. It doesn't matter if it's Danny DeVito at quarterback. I mean, if it's Arnold Schwarzenegger maybe going off of the Twins, he is all aboard. Choo choo! Fantastic. Delighted to see it back. I suppose one considers, when you look at the Giants this season, and you look at the fact that they got 10 in the last game against the Patriots. Brian rightly does point out, in fairness, that they always beat the Commanders, and prior to that. It was pretty much a tale of woe. I think the Packers have gotten hot at the right time. I think they've done a good job of, and we talked about this on Monday, of getting Jordan Love and coaching and developing him. And it's a really young receiver room. And there will be bumps. And I don't think this will be easy. But while I do think Brian Dable will be coaching in New York next year, I don't think Wink Martindale will be. I think maybe they'll have to share pizza and cookies, when they meet up wherever Wink ends up. I don't think he's going to be in New York. And I think that the Packers will have a little too much. Jordan Love will take another step towards what at one point seemed an unlikely playoff berth, but I think the Packers are going to get there.
Yeah, I know it's the most obvious thing to say in the world because there's no statistic that's more closely correlated with winning, apart from obviously scoring more points than turnovers. I think the Giants will need turnovers this weekend. I think they'll need to get after Love in a big way. I think they'll need something special from their defense, because I agree with you, Colm. The way things have been stacking up, the way the Packers have been playing. One of the things that Matt LaFleur does so well, and I don't think you can give him enough credit for it, is he is unbelievable at scheming to get receivers open. All the little tricks, all the little wrinkles, all the little window dressing. Bang, there's Watson available for Love just when he needs him, over and over and over again. He did it brilliantly with Devontae Adams, who, obviously, to his credit, is probably the best route runner in the NFL, but he's able to do it consistently, and he's able to create those openings and make it as easy as possible for Love to develop. And I've seen, that rhythm and that cadence to their offense much more impressive over recent weeks. We saw them struggling at one point to breach the 21-point mark. I think they went 5 or 6 weeks without being able to score more than 21 points after their opening game against the Bears. That seems to have clicked now. Also defensively, their pass rush looks really good. Preston Smith had a great game at the weekend. Rashan Gary is a force. They've got players stepping up in the secondary, even after they let Rasul Douglas go. I don't see the Giants winning this one. I think it's going to be a Green Bay victory. I think unless Giants do something special and put love in the blender or create a couple of turnovers, I don't think it's going to be their day. I'm leaning Packers in this one. Last game of the weekend, Brian, is the Dolphins hosting the Titans on Monday night. The Dolphins, who now really you'd think are the presumptive favourites for that number 1 seed in the AFC, particularly given, as you say, that they play 4 of their last 5 games at home, including this one.
Yeah, and you look at the games in which they have coming up. I mean, they've got the Jets to play at home. They have the Titans. They've got the Bills. Okay, that'll be a tough game.
Did they play the Cowboys in the last week of the season?
Yeah, they got the Cowboys and the Ravens.
The number 1 seed of both conferences probably hinges on that game.
Potentially, both games on Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. I mean, it's going to be a Christmas miracle or a Christmas disaster, one way or the other for the Dolphins. I had the pleasure of a Dolphins fan's company last weekend. He's never been more convinced that this Dolphins team is going to the Super Bowl. He had me convinced by the end of the night. How could I go against them? I certainly won't be going against them in this game. I mean, the Dolphins are playing games now at the moment, and the betting spread on these games is 14 to 14 points. There's an expectation they're going to beat these teams. They were a 14-point handicap last week. They took care of business. They were strong favourites against the Jets. They took care of business. I mean, they're beating up on the poor teams. I can't see anything other than if a Dolphins win it. And the way the Titans season has unraveled, and obviously the unfortunate manner how they lost even that game last week. We spoke during the week and Monday around, is Mike Vrabel, coaching his last few games? Is there a way he can navigate an exit plan to find himself in a new position up in Foxborough? But I mean, I think they're playing just to finish the season, where this Dolphins team are a real threat to be there and essentially be in the Super Bowl potentially. So Dolphins for me. I think this is one of the easier games to select this weekend.
Yeah, likewise, and not a huge amount to add to that. I think it's very straightforward this weekend. I think, again, echoing something that Mike Florio said to us, the Dolphins get the number 1 seed and they have home field advantage in the playoffs. I think there's absolutely a path to Vegas for the Super Bowl for them. Going on the road, they could easily be one and done. It's that simple. But I think the first step on that journey proper takes place this weekend, and I think it'll be a successful one for them. I think they get over the Titans. Colin?
I think the Dolphins losing potentially their best pass rusher is going to be a huge issue in the playoffs. I really do, despite the offense. But they face one of the worst O-lines in the league in the Titans. The Titans are just I called them a trick shot team a couple of weeks ago, and that's what I think they are. Like, even Will Levis's interception fumble recovery. If people haven't yet seen that, seek it out.
What a play.
He throws the interception. He runs up. He makes the tackle. He gets it back. Everything about it is so crazy, and everything about his play is kind of crazy. And we saw Vrabel praising him as he came off the field the other day, but they have sacked their special teams coordinator, which again I think highlights that things aren't going so well there. And when you end up having your Is it 37 million Ryan Tannehill is being paid this year? Your 37 million former starting QB holding for your kicks. You know that things have gotten a little bit crazy.
Yeah. Laces out, Ryan. Laces out.
So to me, I think the Titans will continue to play hard under Vrabel, though I wonder if we're seeing, and it's probably come a lot earlier because, well, they don't have Tom Brady, but Vrabel the coach, fantastic. Vrabel the GM, who wants to say in personnel, maybe a little bit like Belichick the GM. I think that the Dolphins should have enough in this one to get it done.
Alrighty, that brings us to the end of our Week 14 picks and previews. And we have our Thursday night prediction podcast out tomorrow. Brian talking to Shane about Patriots Steelers on Thursday Night Football. Check that one out wherever you get your podcast. And don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe. And we'll talk to you very soon.